Finally, I built something I dreamed of having in my workshop for the longest time. A Mitre Saw Station. But to do it, I had to remove a window. Let me explain. My workshop is small. We are talking around 25 square meters small, and 8 square meters out of it is dedicated to the office space. That leaves me with something around 17 square meters to set up all my tools. Which is why one of the requirements I had for this build was for it to take up no more than 50 centimeters in depth. And that was a bit of a problem, because I have a sliding miter saw, and the space I need for it to function properly is 70 centimeters. But I also had a window I didn't really use. What if I just made the space outside here for it to slide to, so I can make this a little bit smaller so it doesn't take this much space? I think that's what I'm gonna do. Obviously, I wasn't going to leave all the space open, so I needed to create a wall to close it off. For this, I needed a frame, which I quickly put together from some 2x4s, leaving the space for the miter saw to slide into. Just right. Yeah, it was not just right, but more on that later. For now, blissfully unaware of a mistake I've made, I carried on with the closure of the space. The frame was installed in the way that once I added the plywood to its face, it became flush with the already existing wall. On the other side, I cover all of the exposed wood with the waterproof MDF. If you are wondering why I did that, it is because I plan on turning this nook into a storage space for my gardening equipment. Talking about killing two birds with one stone. Yes, I know, I'm supposed to wear a mask. Believe me, I learned my lesson. With a new wall installed and a space for the miter saw to extend to, I was able to cross off the first requirement of the list. But there were 4 more to deal with. The build needs to double as a storage space. It needs a proper dust collection. It needs to be pretty, obviously. And finally, it needs to use as much of my scrap material as possible. Point number 5 was the reason why I used laminated OSB board that came as a top with my standing desk frame for a toe kick instead of throwing it in the garbage where it belonged. Oh yeah, that is another reason why I decided to build this thing. I used my newly installed beautiful floors to align all the pieces and connect them using a nail gun and some screws. OSB is horrible as it is, so I made sure to pre-drill all the holes to avoid the board from splitting. Did I mention my floors are new and leveled and beautiful and leveled? Yeah, that means no wobbling for me and no need for the use of shims or adjustable legs to level everything together. I call that a win. Yep, still leveled. The next day, I cut a full sheet of MDF with my circular saw into a smaller, more manageable pieces before moving on to the table saw to finish all the cuts. Since the build required a lot of parts, which I didn't want to mix with each other, I decided it would be the best to work in passes. First, I built the frames for all the cabinets. The middle wall has notches on each end, allowing the top pieces to fit flush against the side walls. The way I built those cabinets is similar to the method used in the kitchen cabinets. And as with kitchen cabinets, I will be installing the countertop to connect all the structure. Before that though, I needed to put all the frames into place and connect them using screws. With this part done, I could install the shop vac and compressor with the extension in their design spaces before moving on to work on the requirement number 3, the dust collection. One of the main reasons I started this build was to sort out the mess the Mitre Saw tends to make when used. I figured if I added designed shop vac and a hood, that would make it somehow better. Let's see if it actually works. Before that though, I needed to make connection for the dust collection point for the sanding machine. For better inflow, I used 4-inch pipes with 90 degrees connectors. I also printed out the plate to hold everything in place, but apparently it was leave your brain at home kind of day. Once I found my brain and figured out how to make this work, I connected all the pipes, securing everything in place using 3D printed clips. I also designed this piece in the size I needed. A gulp hood, it is called, I believe, but if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments. Anyway, while that was printing, I moved on to construction of the actual hood. Before I could install it in the place, I had to laminate the top of the cabinet that the Mitre Saw was going to sit on. Yeah, that was not the best tool for the job, but I fixed it using a sander and I could finally install the hood. Do you now see my mistake? Still no? Don't worry. But at that point, I still didn't figure it out either. And blissfully unaware, I moved on to the construction of the top. I used the washer to trace all the imperfection in my wall and jigsaw to cut. Then I laminated the top, this time actually using a proper tool to cut the excess off. Corners of the laminate can be very sharp, so I used the sander to smooth all the edges before installing it on the left side of the cabinet. Then I repeated the same process on the other side, just in time for the print to finish. I probably should have cut this hole before putting everything together, but as we already established, my brain wasn't working that well that day. So thank God for the multi-tool. Yeah, I measured that wrong. Let's not talk about this. Instead, let's talk about point number 2. I know this might be controversial, but I believe the best storage system is made up of drawers. That's why I'll be making a lot of them. Also, the hood really does make a difference. Did I mention I'll be making a lot of drawers? Like a lot? Needless to say, this was the end of my working day. The next day I came to workshop feeling like I was hit by the bus. Working all day and making 16 drawers all at once will do that to you. Thankfully the task for that day was pretty easy. Install all the drawers. I used this makeshift jig I threw together some time ago, which works surprisingly well to align the sliders on the drawers and some scrap wood to make correct spacing inside the cabinet. For the two big drawers, I decided to double the sliders, since they were designed to store heavy objects, which in the end they didn't, but that's a different story. Since the installation went really smooth, I had some time left to start to work on the drawer fronts. For a while now, I've been using this trick where I paint full sheet of MDF before cutting it into smaller pieces. The only problem is that most of the time I end up with exposed edges, since I like to round them with the router. But instead of painting them before installation, I do it after. It saves me a great deal of time and space. Especially space. Imagine if I had to paint all of them and set them up somewhere to dry. It would take up all the surfaces in my workshop, making it impossible for me to work on anything else. Finally, with everything painted, it was time for the handles. I used these nice gold ones because, you know, point number 4. And with that, the build was done. Well, almost done. I still need to install the stop block here and put the front of the hood, but other than that, it's all done. Now let's talk about the mistake I've made. The hood I've made is too small to adjust for angle cuts. I don't know how I didn't see it before, but yeah, it's too small. Thankfully, most of my cuts are straight, so that's not gonna be a huge problem for me. But I also found a solution in case I do want to do the cuts. A jig. I guess that's what I'll be building next.